So we have Erin Cluley with us today,
Yeah.
and Erin Cluley runs Erin Cluley Gallery. And part of why we wanted to have this conversation with Erin is because she has received a lot of attention for showing local artists recently, or not recently, since 2014, right, is when you opened your
Yes.
space.
Yep.
And I think that this has been sort of a building trend in the city to turn more attention to art that's being made here, which is something we really love at the Cedars Union. But we're frequently asked by buyers, how do you find affordable art? How do you find emerging art? Maybe before they've gotten to someone like Erin, or from artists asking how you go about approaching a gallery or getting gallery representation, which is a kind of a tricky thing to navigate. So I don't have those answers. I usually am not able to answer those questions. And we'll have Erin Cluley here today to dig into it. Erin, could you, I guess, tell us a little bit about your background so people can get on your page?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of do a quick, where I'm from and a little bit about my career path and kind of how I went, you know, the path I took to where I am now. So thanks everyone for joining. This is fun. I love doing stuff like this, and it's exciting to know that there's a lot of people, I'm assuming in Dallas, that are tuning in. So I am a native Texan, and so I grew up in Wichita Falls, and then I went to university there. I went to Midwestern State University, and I studied painting. And after that, I kind of thought I'll go the route of getting my master's so that I can teach on the college level. And at that point, I sort of thought, isn't that maybe that's what all artists do to have some stability? I didn't know anything. This was um, uh, coming from a very sort of naive place. But I ended up working for a newspaper for a little bit, doing graphic design. And I will say that job, I only had it for a year or so, but I was kind of thrown to the wolves in terms of having to do a lot of different things with graphic design. And I'm really thankful because I'm able to do a lot of my own kind of, in-house, if I need, small design things or even website stuff, I'm able to do on my own. So then I decided it was time to go to graduate school. Granted, it was not long after undergrad. And so I ended up applying to various schools, and I got in at the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, in Baltimore, and it was a 2-year painting program. And so that was a real eye-opening experience. I mean, not only, just kind of seeing these other people, these other artists that were in different places in their careers, and then going to graduate school. I was really kind of on the young end. I mean, I was 23. I really hadn't had much life experience, but there were other people who had been, teaching high school for several years or had been working in museums or various other things. And so it was just kind of good to have these, colleagues that were coming from different places. And so that was a 2-year program. I did do some teaching, during that time, meaning college level teaching by doing kind of teaching assistantships at MICA. And I think it was a combination of things. I think there are so many gifted people who are gifted in the teaching realm. And I was young. I don't think that I'm a real gifted teacher. And so I just decided, I don't think that the teaching route is for me, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll be on the administrative side on the university level or something like that. Well, I ended up finding a job at a gallery in Baltimore, and it was the Seagramaldus Gallery. And so after 2 years of grad school, I worked for that gallery for 4 years. And those 4 years were really instrumental in terms of just learning, you know, there's this kind of unwritten handbook or whatever for this world. And I think it's just because, I mean, you and I briefly talked about, it's just there's so many different paths that people take to where they get to in terms of their careers in the arts. It's just not, there is no formula. And so I worked for him for 4 years, but I really learned a lot about how galleries work with artists. I was also kind of able to, just being in Baltimore, I was able to go up to New York a lot and just kind of see shows and things like that. But, in terms of the business side of of the gallery kind of artist relationship, it was really it was just instrumental. And so and the man, Costas Grimaldis, who owns the gallery, is still kind of a mentor to me. But I then wanted to move back to Texas because my sister was pregnant with twins, and it was all sort of family stuff was tugging at my heartstrings. So I thought I'll get back to Texas and kind of the land. So I ended up working for Dallas Contemporary for 5 years, and then going on to open my own space. And I think that it was really interesting to work with Dallas Contemporary because, and we can talk a little bit about this now or down the way, but working at Dallas Contemporary, I was learning a lot about the artist gallery relationship, kind of from the institutional side. So I was seeing how, because I think a lot of artists don't even know, but the gallery is and should be your advocate in those situations. Like an artist having an exhibition at a museum, the gallery can really advocate for you and help be support, whatever that means, just kind of always being the middleman of making sure consignment agreements are signed, or insurance things are taken care of, or whatever. So so I worked for Dallas Contemporary. That was a wild and fun ride in terms of a job. And then I ended up opening Erin Cluley Gallery. And so that's been, I guess, coming up on, 6 years. So 2014 opened in West Dallas, and then now I'm in the design district. So that's my background and where I am in a nutshell. So,
it's interesting, Dallas Contemporary specifically as an institution, because they don't have a permanent collection, so they have like a rotating cast in a different way than other museums do, but it's also still not based in sales. Was that a hard jump for you to make, going into the commercial aspect of showing art? Not to say that there's no commercial aspect to showing art in Dallas Contemporary, but
no, that's a good question. And I think that, and I remember at the time, the job in a lot of ways was very similar. And that was because I was doing a lot of like logistical things, working with the artists to kind of make the shows, kind of production side of things at the gallery and at Dallas Contemporary. And then I would always say that I was just selling a different product. I was in the gallery, I was selling art, and in the museum, I was really selling like the membership and experience. And so, I kind of, because, technically at Dallas Contemporary, that wasn't really part of my job, was to kind of interface with, donors and things like that. But I, in a way, had this experience of working with clients and things in the gallery. And so I liked that part of it, and so it was a very kind of natural fit.
Mm-hmm. When you began your gallery in 2014, how did you build your first roster of artists? Did you kind of just start one at a time, or did you have a map of a variety, or what was your approach in choosing who you wanted to represent?
So whenever I first whenever I was planning on opening, so about 18 months out, and I was starting to plan, I thought I really wanted to open already having a kind of a small group of artists, like a roster that I was working with. And so I went to some artists that I had prior relationships with, from living in Baltimore and working at Grimaldis Gallery, and then a couple of my, fellow colleagues from grad school. So there was that. And then I had, from working at Dallas Contemporary, I of course had started to be exposed to some Dallas-based artists. And so it started with, Renee Trevino and Hidenori Ishii are both former colleagues of mine from Baltimore. Renee lives in Baltimore. Hidenori lives in New York and Long Island City. And then I was, we had done a show with Kevin Todora at Dallas Contemporary. I loved his work. At the time, I had approached Josephine Durkin and Francisco Moreno. So they were kind of all, it was a group that I had some kind of relationship with, pretty much. Cassandra Emsweiler Bird. So yeah, it was artists I had worked with in some capacity, and of course that I I loved their work. I mean, that was, that's always part of the equation. So, and something I felt very strongly with after, some other experiences, like in my career leading up to that, was that I had really told myself, I feel very strongly about working with people who are not only making great artwork, but are good people. I mean, that was a real like important criteria to me, nice and professional. I mean, they're simple things. A lot of people are that way, but so.
So it kind of started as like it was really network based. Do you feel like that's still the case? Do you mostly, like, if you're deciding, okay, I want to take on a new artist, is it because you saw some art that you really loved and then dig deeper, or do you actually go on a sort of research mission to find, like, okay, who else can I find in the city or in Texas or whatnot?
Yeah, I think I think it kind of happens in a variety of ways. I mean, one of the things that I often talk to, either, younger artists or artists that are new in their career or new to the Dallas community, is, I find a lot, I trust the artists that I work with already. And I often go to them and say, what are you looking at? Whose shows are you going to? Um, and so I always suggest, I was just talking to an artist that I met who, we don't have any sort of professional relationship. She's a friend of a friend, but she moved here from LA. And I said, meet other artists, do swap studio visits, with artists, because I feel like oftentimes they can be your best advocates. And then, I always, am trying to go and see shows, when I can. And, I always appreciate people inviting me to things, and, try to see as much as I can, because if something really does spark my interest that I may not have any connection to through anyone else, I will dig deeper. And then, if they're here in the area, I always love to do a studio visit. That's always a really good experience to just kind of see, a sort of better scope of what, the artist is up to.
So if you are, like, let's say, because there's a conundrum you're pointing out, where if you're looking for an artist, and the way that to find artists is to go to shows that are then given by other galleries. Like, if you're trying to find someone who is, before gallery representation as a buyer, you know, the Cedars Union is a
Yeah,
great
I mean,
place
yeah.
to go, but do you have any other sort of tips on how someone might find work very early in an artist's career?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's obviously the communities like Cedars Union. There's, I feel like there's a couple of good, studio tours that we have now, and I know people have a lot of fun with those. I guess there's the Cedars. Is it the Cedars, or I can't remember what the one is called.
Yeah, Cedars Open Studio
Yeah, and
and
then art,
Speed,
art
Speed Bump.
yeah, Speed Bump. Art Walk West was one that I was really kind of involved in the planning of. Not anymore because I'm not technically in West Dallas, but that was really a good way for people to get into studios that they might not otherwise. And I feel like I will come upon university shows and things like that too, or nonprofit kind of, maybe not your museums, but your art centers,
Mm-hmm.
um, the MAC or things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really like, and I'm sorry to say this to everybody during the pandemic when it's vastly harder to make new friends,
I know.
but it's kind of like make friends, get plugged into a community, find a network, and that's you could make the most wonderful work, but if you don't have those avenues to kind of help show people how wonderful it is, it's really hard to get.
Yeah, and I know, because I have to keep reminding myself we will get through this, time that we're living in right now eventually. And you know, as kind of some as I don't know, introverted as some of us might be and things, it might not like to go to openings, but it really, it's part of the whole kind of career building thing that you have to do, um, and again, I think, going to openings, you'll start to get to know people. And I really just I think meeting other artists, swapping, and not only swapping studio visits just so that this person knows who you are, but getting critical feedback in your studio too. Because, making, making good, informed, thoughtful, meaningful work, that's where it all starts. I mean, you can't do anything without that. And so I think that, and whatever that means to you, if that means, pursuing the MFA, or if that just means, becoming a part of these great communities like Cedars Union, but finding a way where you are able to get critical feedback in your studio. I mean, I think that's really key too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking about other ways you can try to kind of spark something right now. If, as an artist, is like, if you like dip into a curatorial project, for instance, and it gives you an excuse to sort of reach out to other artists and say, hey, I have this project, I have like a Xerox print exchange, or just like
Right.
finding a reason to have to connect with people. um, while everything is, while maybe there's not gallery openings, but there are appointments,
Yeah,
um, which maybe gives you more, you get to see the art better.
for sure.
Okay, let me actually, I'm going to ask, so Lori McLean had a question about getting a show at the Dallas Contemporary. I know the Dallas Contemporary has, infrequently, but they do shows of local artists, but it's all based on an application process, I believe. Do you know better than
Dallas,
I know?
Dallas Contemporary is more, you know, like how a museum would sort of plan out, their shows are planned out often, 18 months, 2 years in advance, and curators are working to put those together. So there, as far as I know, there aren't really opportunities to apply for anything. But that's, getting a show at Dallas Contemporary is going to be like getting a show at, the DMA or something. I mean, that's going to be like, when you do have your show at the Dallas Contemporary, that's going to be a really big milestone in your career. So there's a
Right.
lot of kind of build up to that.
Yeah, I know. When I was, shared a studio with Kier Tanchak, and she got a show at the Dallas Contemporary, and that's what made me remember that, like, every so once in a while, I think that they maybe have a spot. I don't know. Look it up, Lori. I think there it's rare, but I think that sometimes it happens. It's probably not first step though, as Erin's saying. Okay, so in terms of deciding to uh, have such a percentage of Texas artists or Dallas-based artists, what made you want to do that? And then also, what do you do to sort of convince buyers that there's stock in that instead of purchasing from New York or LA?
So, I started out my program thinking, okay, I will, I want to work with, artists that are, local and regional, but also have some artists that I had these, past relationships in Baltimore and the East Coast. And then I had thought, okay, I should have some sort of international component. And, but to be perfectly honest, I mean, it is logistically much more difficult to show artworks that are not being made, that are being made outside of Dallas. And that's just, a number of things. And I say this, I mean, I end up, it's a very positive thing that my program has kind of come together this way. But, I am able to see my artists often, visit their studios here. Um, shipping and transport, getting the artwork to the gallery is much less expensive, depending on what the artwork is. But, that is something that I think I just learned in terms of business, on the business side of it, logistics and expenses. It was easier for me to work with Dallas or regionally based artists. But also I found that, and I think this is probably in every city, we love to sort of know the story of, we love to know the story about the artworks. And oftentimes we like to know that there's some sort of like tie to our place and our place and, where we live. So, clients really, I'm able to take clients over to artist studios as well. And that's something that I can't do with my artists that are out of state. So, and that's important to me. And I think that since the pandemic has happened, I think that people have even been paying more attention to kind of and taking more interest in like the hyper local. And I don't know what that, maybe it's just because they were literally like, we've been like stuck at home. And so thinking about things they can access that are close by and around them. But I think that's been interesting. I think between these kind of small regional like pop-up art fairs online and things like that, that are, not necessarily the big kind of global things, but like really looking at, what galleries are doing here.
Mm-hmm.
So did I answer all the questions, all the parts of that question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just it's something that I'm from Dallas, and I've left and I've come back, and um, something that struck me is this sort of like revolving door of people um, who make art here and then may eventually leave, or people who like specifically want to be here because it's easy to travel from this point, or and one of the things I love to see the city talking about is how we can retain artists, how we can make this city more appealing to be in. And I think efforts like yours, whether it stems from pragmatism or not,
Yeah.
really help to, I think, uplift the fact that like you can have a really beautiful, well-supported gallerist in this city that would be interested in your artwork. And it's great to see when galleries do that. So
And I think that, in a way, like gone are the days of I mean, not necessarily, but it's this, you don't have to move to New York to, have a career. I feel like that was kind of something people thought, decades ago. And, because Dallas is, we have these amazing institutions, like you were saying, it's this place to travel in and out of very easily. And, I feel like the sort of, the pond is smaller in a way of the artists that are based here and that are living here. And I think it, you know, lends itself to more opportunity. And, even because, you know, I feel like in these other, kind of major metropolises, you know, talking to a curator at a major museum or institution is just maybe not as common. I mean, I think that that's a very easy and attainable thing to do here, whether that's just, socially it's something or whatever. But I think that Dallas, in a way, I think you can find a lot more opportunities here, to build your career, between galleries, curators, collectors that come in from all over, the Dallas Art Fair, things like that. So
yeah, it's a smaller but very active kind of pond.
right.
And Susan actually has 3 pieces from Cedars Union artists, which is really
Yeah,
exciting. She had a comment. She said that they got involved in the Dallas art world only after their kids grew up and found it unusually open, accessible, and friendly, much more so than the East Coast where we are from. And that even if you're shy, she encourages you to get involved. So
and
people are moving here all the time. And I kind of say the same thing. It's just, again, pandemic weirdness caveat. Yeah. but there's stuff going on all the time. And you're sort of reinforcing just the network.
Yeah. And I think that, I think Susan's totally right. I mean, and I think that I can certainly speak for CAD, the Contemporary Art Dealers of Dallas, which is a gallery member organization. And, we are all very open, and we're going to be, friendly. And also we are going to, try and, education is part of this whole thing for us. So I had a young man come in the other day, and he had messaged me on Instagram and said, I'm interested in this one particular artist, and Taylor Barnes, one of the artists that I show. And, he said, I've been following her on Instagram, and I've been following her through the gallery, and I've never bought a piece of artwork before. So, can I come in and chat? I'm like, absolutely, and we can talk about all the different, ways that we want to make this. I want to tell you all about it. I can even ask Taylor to tell you a little bit more about an artwork, so you get even kind of a artist's take on it. And so it's not like the old movies or whatever, where it's a bunch of pretentious people in the galleries. Everyone's very nice and welcoming and warm for the most part, I would think. So
I want to pick up on the studio visit. Do you have recommendations or, like, I don't know, any advice to someone who gets a studio visit, whether they're looking to buy art or they're an artist inviting someone into their studio?
what's the question? Sorry.
let's say an artist gets a studio visit, you contact an artist, you want to visit their studio. What should they prepare for as an artist inviting you into the studio?
Um, well, I would say, I mean, one, just make sure that there's enough artwork to really look at. Um, and then I like if someone will prepare, like on screen, um, some things that kind of show me the work chronologically, maybe leading up to it, whether that's on their website or even an Instagram feed. But if I'm looking at 5 paintings in the studio, and the artist is brand new to me, often I try to do a little bit of research ahead of time, but say that I didn't, it's nice for me to have some context and kind of see where they're coming from, and see maybe the last, I don't know, a few works produced over the last year, a couple of years or something
Kind
like
of
that.
like an evolution, so you can see where they may be growing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the most important thing is to really feel good about where you are with the current artwork, and that there's enough to show. I remember one time when I was at Dallas Contemporary and we did a visit, and we went, and there really wasn't much to see, and it's just kind of a bummer, and it just, that's important. That's what we're there to see, so.
And then on the other end of that, if you've found an artist you like and you're able to go directly to the artist to buy something, if you've, like I said, like maybe someone isn't yet um, represented. I mean, my biggest advice would just be like, just ask for the price, and instead of being too afraid to do so. But do you have any other comments there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's true. And then on the artist side of it, be prepared in that sense too. Have a price list, either wherever. It can be something formal or on your phone, but just be confident in where you're at with that. So yeah, yeah. But with collectors, I mean, I think, you know, same with us at the gallery. I mean, I've been thinking so much about transparency and pricing, and for the last couple of years, because the gallery world is famous for not being transparent. And so, but the pandemic has done this whole other thing that has just, there's fairs and online viewing rooms and all these things, and so many more people are putting their pricing up. And I just think it's the best way to be. And so, anyway, but don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, it's just sort of an oddity of this industry that it's like just so common to not have anything there, and I think it intimidates people a lot because art is notoriously expensive, and for many reasons. But you can always say like, oh, it's a fair price, but I can't do it, but you never know unless you ask. Okay, we have a question that is a studio necessary? Some artists work from home studios or non-accessible spaces. Is there any advice on showing work to collectors or gallerists if you work from home?
And I would say, I mean, I represent several artists who, work in a room in their house. So, as long as you're putting together a space that's good for you for production, I mean, that's great. In terms of if you're not able to, invite that person over to that space, I would think if you already have, if you were, say, reaching out to me and I was interested in looking at the work, and you just said, you know what, I don't think it's a good, the space isn't accessible, then we could just talk about figuring out a way to see the work. I mean, whether that's bringing a few things to the gallery, or if you had a friend that was going to let you set some things up on their walls at their business or something. But I wouldn't be afraid that a house studio is going to seem unprofessional or something. It's very common. I mean, people are working in their garages or their second bedroom or whatever. So, that's all fine and good.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the space that things are being made, then there's traces of that making all over the space. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about having a dedicated studio. But you very well may be like, every time you work, you pull things out, and it also happens to be your kitchen, and then you have to put it back away.
Yeah.
But I know, like in the past, when I've had studio visits, and lately they are of largely inactive studios. Sometimes it's embarrassing to admit. I sort of like stage how things might look if I had like just finished
Yeah.
a piece, which sounds artificial, but in a way it's not, because I'm trying to visually invite you into the process, which is what making art is all about. So.
And that is absolutely, like, I mean, I feel like that's why I don't mind at all that it's in, in this small corner of your house or whatever. If you get to see, I got to see the sketchbooks of someone the other day. I mean, it's very meaningful to someone like me, and a collector or someone that's interested in your work. So, you know,
Yeah, even if dirty socks are part of the process, then that's okay. Okay, another question. Based on your extensive work with your art collectors, do you search for new work and new artists with specific collectors in mind?
that's a great question. I think sometimes yes. I think that there has been instances where a collector might actually point to an artist that they have seen somewhere and said, you know what, this is someone you should look at. And, and then on the flip side, I mean, I am in the business of selling, and that's not the only part of the gallery gig, but that is a big part of it. And so I do think of like the market. And so with that, there would be, collectors in there. You know, I wouldn't say that I would maybe think of like specifically one or two people, because I don't know that that would be enough. But yeah, I mean, but I'm thinking about those things, like if I can sell the work or not. But it's not always the commerce side of it, because something that I do a lot of, and I believe in, is this career development for an artist kind of overall, which means my relationships that I value very much with curators from institutions and things like that, because getting them into the artist studio or getting them in to come and see a show, is really important for the artist and for the gallery, because that's all part of kind of building the careers of the artists. So I do have collectors in mind when I'm thinking about an artist, but I also am thinking about kind of more holistically, like the big picture.
Are you able to, when you're putting up a show, are you able to kind of decide like, oh, I think that this one is definitely going to sell? Like, how good are you at predicting the sellability of the work in the studio?
So I'm doing these silver linings interviews with artists. When the pandemic started, I decided to do these interviews with my artists and kind of see what they're up to. And I did an interview with my artist, Renee Trevino. And in the backdrop of where he was sitting was these beautiful moon paintings, which are up in the gallery right now. And so this was several months ago. And I kind of had I always have the summer exhibition up during this time, but I thought, everything's different right now. So I'll do the summer show in the front. And then I asked Renee if I could have the moons and some of these star fields that he was making in the second gallery. I said, I know I could sell they're so beautiful. I know I could sell every single one. Anyway, we've sold 5 of 6 of them. So that's a good example of my, I like to think I can predict a little bit, but not always, that's for sure.
Right. Well, I did read a little bit about the impetus of you starting your gallery based on a psychic reading.
That was my first and only psychic reading, but yes, he ended up telling me that he could see me with a gallery, working with artists, and
Uh-huh.
it had been something I'd been thinking about, and was just kind of the thing that lit the fire, which was good, but hilarious too. So
Okay, let's see. Frank Lopez, it seems that an MFA is a minimum requirement for many galleries. What are your thoughts? Also, would you comment about the need for a dedicated online presence, if any preferences?
So MFAs, I would say, are not, are not a requirement, certainly for me, and what I'm looking to whenever I'm looking to an artist and kind of what they're doing. That said, I think that what the MFA can do is and for me, because I have personal experience of actually getting an MFA in painting. I mean, I don't do that anymore, but I know what that's like to go through. And it was a time where I was able to dedicate like my life to this practice, which was a real privilege. I mean, I think I was too young to appreciate it too, but it was 2 years where I was working part time, but truly, I mean, the studio and MFA and working towards that was my life, and so I think that oftentimes because of that MFA, the work develops in such a way that you may just not have had the chance for that. You get so much critical feedback from fellow artists, but also from writers and curators, and all, these programs get people through your studio. So I do think there's a lot of value in it, but I definitely don't think it's a requirement. And the need for dedicated online preference, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I think you're talking about a website
Oh,
or Instagram.
online presence, like a website, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, me personally, I go to artists' Instagram feeds now, and it's like something that's evolved over the last several years. It's like I feel like a lot of artists are treating their Instagram feeds like a website, and it's an archive. But it also, and something that I think is really important that I was thinking about a little bit ago is, telling your story. And that's just kind of, I mean, Adrian, you probably can talk to this, but speak to this. It's part of marketing, is telling the story of a place or a person, and I think Instagram lends itself to that, is telling the story of having the people love to see inside the studio. And that's one way they can do it. I mean, whether that's through the feed or through stories or whatever. But of course, a website it's a great way to just kind of have your work archived too. I mean, I have several artists who really treat their website as their archive, so
Mhm.
I actually can go to it a lot and just make sure we have everything in order. So
Yeah, I think on both of these questions, like on your comments on the MFA, I would definitely back up. It's like in no way necessary, but if you can find a way to give yourself that much dedication for a period of time, like a residency,
right,
or
residencies,
even
right.
just like buckling down and telling yourself that, I mean, one of the interesting things about the Cedars Union that I was talking about with an artist the other day is the studio spaces are actually they're juried in, and you have 18 months there. And unlike a just regular studio lease where you're done when you're done and it's kind of like ongoing every time you renew, it creates this timeline in which you feel like you need to complete work and you need to make the most of your time during this segment of a year and a half. So I think as time progresses, and the academic model becomes unattainable for its expenses, that we'll continue to see other alternatives arise. But it's a wonderful experience. And then the Instagram, and I definitely have a website. I mean, it's actually so easy now.
No. Yeah.
We had a webinar a couple weeks ago with Nathan Madrid, who spoke for an hour about good practices and great platforms to start a website. That's on our YouTube page if you want to look at that, Frank. And then the Instagram, yeah, it's if you love to post a selfie every day and a shot of your lunch every morning, that doesn't make sense, breakfast every morning, then I would suggest you have like a personal one and a
Right.
professional one.
Yeah.
Because if Erin goes to your Instagram, she's going to want to be able to see the art fairly quickly.
Yeah.
She wants to see
Yeah.
the story. She wants to see the person. But
Yes.
if she has to go through like 20 dog pics to get to one artwork, then you're losing the use of the archive. Okay, thank you. Let's see. I'm starting to feel like we're falling behind. Deborah Myers says, I've been an artist my entire life, but I am just now getting serious about doing it professionally after raising my children. Is it a problem that I don't have a robust CV, or is the work the main thing regardless of shows or gallery representation?
Yeah, I'm working with an artist now, Catherine McMahon, who she had um, school and practiced as an artist, had children. So for a good 10 years, she was kind of out of the game in a sense, but was still being creative, but has just in the last couple of years really focused in on maintaining an active studio practice. And for me, I mean, that didn't matter at all to me. It was about the work, but it was also about her network too, meaning the introduction kind of came by way of someone else in the community that I respected. So I think she had started to get herself back out there and meeting people and things like that. So
This next question is we pretty much just covered, so I think we can skip through it. It's on how important social media is. It's important. It's a great way for people to see your stuff, and you don't have to be. I'll direct you to another webinar that we have on our Instagram page that can tell you like how you can be efficient on it, and not make it a total time suck, because it could also be bad too. Next question, when in your gallery, I've always noticed that you have such a variety of ground substrate styles and mediums, sculptures, paintings, textiles, and more. Do you have a certain idea of types of art typically for your exhibitions?
I've been asked a version of that question over the years, and I think that I studied painting, and so I think that there is something for me that I am personally drawn to, and my name is the one on the door, so it's my sort of taste at the end of the day. But I even artworks like Kevin Todora, for example, he's making photography, but it's so rooted in painting and this kind of very like painterly, surfacey kind of work. So I think that I'm drawn to work regardless of what it is, like rooted in painting. But I end up showing a variety of things, of course, like you said, sculpture and textiles and things. And then I think as my program began, I think it was kind of what I liked. I really was, just kind of focused in on what I was drawn to. Now I've been able to kind of like craft my program a little bit more. And I have thought about things like, what am I missing? What am I missing to kind of round out my program in a way? And so I've been kind of asking myself that lately. So there's no real method to the madness, but because at the end of the day, like I said, it's sort of my taste. But I am trying to think about rounding it out and having a variety of media.
Mm-hmm. Are there certain things you like to hear in an artist's elevator speech? For example, if an artist gets an unexpected opportunity to present themselves to a gallerist. So like, let's say, well, let's pose a scenario.
Great question.
Someone comes to an appointment only visitation of Erin Cluley's gallery, and you're there, and you start small talking, and you say, "Oh, are you an artist yourself?" And then they have the opportunity. They've got like 2 minutes to wow you.
Okay, so this is where, and I know it like kind of always comes back to this like networking thing, which I don't know, it is so kind of key. And I think that is, well, two things. And I know that this is a lot for the elevator speech, but you know, I will it will mean something to me if I know that you know someone that's important to me, right? And that's just, I think that's just kind of normal kind of, yeah, human interaction with people, right? It's like, that is meaningful to me. If you know, I'm a friend of Anna Membrino's, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't know. It's it's someone that knows you that I sort of know and trust. I don't know. That sounds, I don't know how you'll take that, but it's it could be meaningful, which will help our conversation kind of go along. But also something that I've talked to artists about over the years that have reached out to me in a different way, not necessarily just kind of running into me or whatever, but reaching out to me and kind of asking if I would be interested in looking at their work, is that, you know, have you done the research to look and see what my gallery is kind of program is sort of made up? And I think that's really important, because as you do start to look to reach out to galleries, or to kind of start, you know, putting these wheels in motion of the networking of how I can kind of, you know, how you can sort of get your work in front of the person, is, you know, do you actually think that you're a good fit for Erin Cluley Gallery? Because it's really important. I mean, I think that says something about you too, that you've done the research. And so if there's an opportunity, you know, to share that too, it's like, okay, I know I know that, you know, you might like my work because I've seen that you have this other thing here. So if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, name drop. And then also
No, it doesn't. That's like, oh, I mean, I don't want it to seem like that, but it just goes back to like getting to know people in your community. And yes, I guess name dropping, but like, you know, yeah.
No, it's okay. This is the honesty is so effective. Oh, well, on that note, I wanted to ask you, so I think that there's this initial feeling of when sometimes when people will like graduate from their BFA, or they've like decided that they're going to be an artist, they're going to put together a portfolio, and they're going to go to every artist in the city and drop off their work and introduce themselves. It's like the old-fashioned salesman ethic that, like, as an artist, I can't tell you how many times I've had like someone who knows nothing about the industry be like, well, why don't you just go do this?
Right.
Why should someone not do that? Or maybe I'm wrong. Why should someone do that?
So, I mean, I think there's a very simple sort of, you know, be respectful of people's time. And that's just a general, you know, thing, right? I mean, you know, I'm going to appreciate much more if you ask me to come over for a studio visit, or make an appointment so they could come and chat with me or something like that. Because, you know, just walking in and kind of having something to show me, I mean, you know, yes, we are a gallery and we kind of have open hours, but I mean, you know, we're working and have things going on and appointments and things. Um, I had a thought and I was gonna, oh, you know, something you said made me think of, you know, kind of out of getting out of your BFA or your MFA, and juried exhibitions. I think that there's something really that can be really important about those, which is looking to see who the jurors are. And that's, they could be a dealer, a gallerist like me, or a curator at the museum, or what have you. I've had young artists kind of in my sphere that have had really, good, I say good luck, but it's important. I don't think apply to every juried exhibition that you find. I think that's what someone kind of told me whenever I was younger. And it's, do your research, see what exhibitions, your work could be interesting in, and really, truly get your work in front of these people by seeing who the jurors are, because that's important. So.
And to again reference previous programs on our YouTube channel,
yeah,
subscribe and like. We did a conversation with Leslie Moody Castro about this very topic, about applying to juried shows and how important it is to do your research before you go. And maybe if you're in that stage of like you're new to Dallas or you're new to the Dallas gallery scene, one of the best things you can do is just to get to know the program of the galleries in the city and see, like, if the gallery doesn't show any Dallas artists, and like that might not be the one you'd want to approach, for instance. So you want to look at those details.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at 6:30. There's one more question here, asking, does size matter? I guess, do you sell, like, the bigger paintings sell better, or
no, I mean, I think you need to make the work that is most appropriate for your work. I mean, make the size of the work that's most appropriate for your work. I mean, I show everything from, large scale paintings to, intimate little drawings, or so. And I think a lot of artists want to scale up, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. So, that's another thing. If you can't, you just can't, like, make the work that you can. So.
Yeah. And then the last question, when you represent artists, is it generally regional area or statewide? I'll answer for them both. And also nationally and internationally. So all over the place. Great. Well, thank you so much, Erin.
It's really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you guys all learned a lot. I know I did. We actually are having a similar conversation, but in a different sort of approach with Joshua next week, the co-founder of Aurora.
Okay.
And that will be talking more about, like, large projects, how you go about finding large projects and also kind of scaling up to that extent. And at the end of this month, we'll have a webinar on search engine optimization, which is another way that you can sort of, like, be found, how you can make your website or your name more searchable through essentially Google or other search engines. So check out our website to learn.
Great. Y'all are doing some great programming. I love it.
Thank you. It is hard to get the same kind of warm and fuzzies when I have, there's like 40 names listed here and I can't see anyone's face. Yeah. But I hope that it's making everyone happy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Erin. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right. You too. Thank you, everyone.